Now, Phil. All right, I'm going to put in the chat for everyone. Get social with us. We are live posting using show your love.
Thanks, Suzanne.
On Twitter, on Instagram, I know you have it, and on Facebook. All right, we're about 1 minute away from kicking off Future Forward. We see a bunch of people still logging on, so we're just letting people join, get settled at their desks. I'm going to also put the Jamboard link in the chat. All right, we're right at 1:15. I have a question for my team real quick. If I have the run of show, can you see the run of show or the slides?
I see the slides.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm like, I just want to be able to follow the run of show. why don't we get started? Let's get going. We have a lot to cover today, and let's go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Shamika, go ahead. I'm gonna go on mute.
Welcome everyone to the Preconception Coin and Show Your Love Initiative Future Forward National Convening of Equity-Centered Women's Wellness. This is the first of 3 amazing virtual days of this conference. Across these 3 days, we will build energy, create conversations, share information, and learning that will assist us in charting the course forward in preconception health. I just want to take a moment to let everyone know that those of us with the Show Love Initiative and here at Future Forward Convening want to make sure that it is known that we are about gender affirming care. We advocate for and hope that our language reflects that, and want to make sure that everyone knows that in speaking about health, we are talking about everyone in their conception years. Those who are birthing people, those who support them, and those who may one day want to start a family or decide that they do not want to start a family. This conference is for all of us. So I realized I just said all that and didn't even introduce myself. My name is Shamika Tumblin, and I am one of our fellow Show Your Love ambassadors, aka a part of the Dream Team.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eilish Neely, a maternal health, public health practitioner out of New York City.
And we're so grateful for the Show Your Love squad for joining us today and serving as our co-hosts. You've just met Shamika Tumblin and Eilish Neely. Across these next few days, you'll get to know a few of our other ambassadors, including Ana Cabello de la Garza, Kennedy Bridges, and Jessica Haynes. So we're so grateful for them for joining our team and supporting our Future Forward conference as both co-hosts, as panelists, and as social media experts.
Today, we're pretty lucky to have our very own and our very much fabulous Rio Holiday, the graphic facilitator, who will be taking beautiful notes as we hit a lot of points, as we share a lot of ideas, as we come together and brainstorm how we can actually move the work forward. So you'll be able to see Rio different times on screen. And then, of course, if you follow us on social media, you'll see more of Rio's work, and also be sure to tag us. Also, very important, if you guys go into the toolkit and sign the media release form, because we will be taking screenshots, and we also are recording this session for folks who are not able to join during this time.
Also, you can find all the details you need to join our conference on the Conference Hub. Registration is staying open if others would like to join last minute, and please be sure to share with your network so that they can join as we're going. Also, we would like for you all to know on the Hub, we've also included a Jamboard for attendees to post inspiration, thoughts, ideas, and challenges for us all to review throughout the day. If you happen to experience any technical difficulties, please do not hesitate to reach out via email to Catherine Bryant, who is going to post her email in the chat for everyone to see. There are a few ways that you can engage with the speakers and others during this conference. You can do that via chat, small breakout groups, and our idea board. Please share key points with us via social media using our hashtag #ShowYourLoveToday. We are live posting on social media, and we will use this because this is our Show Your Love consumer campaign, and we're excited to use their hashtag to show important messages that we're learning and hearing during the sessions. Also, you will also see quotes from a lot of us, and we will have the people that the quotes were by tagged. So feel free to follow us on social media so that we can tag you. And we have an evaluation survey each day. So please take a minute to fill that out. It really matters to us, and it will truly help us do nothing but get better in the future.
And for those COIN representatives and COIN teams joining us today, you might have already received an email. If not, please stay close to your inbox. From 4 to 5 p.m. today, Eastern Standard Time, there is an invitation only for COIN teams as a celebration gathering for you all. So be sure to check your email. And if anything, email Catherine Bryant. Her email should be in the chat. I want to spend this time to acknowledge the land that is indigenous land, and it wasn't first inhibited by first peoples of this land, our American Indian people, and was stolen from them. We offer gratitude for living the legacy of these communities and to commit to honoring this land and their contributions, past, present, and future. And so right now we're going to shift into the first panel. And while we do that, we just ask all of our participants to just rep where you're from, where do you represent, where do you work? Please put in the chat. We would love to know.
We also want to take this time to thank our funders, the Maternal and Child Health Bureaus at HRSA, for making this convening possible. I'd like to introduce our project officer, Vanessa Lee, to offer a welcome. And after Vanessa, we'll hear from our first panel speakers who will set the stage in session 1.
Thank you so much, Shamika. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Vanessa Lee, as she said, from HRSA's Maternal and Child Health Bureau. I'm located in DC, and right now we're under a tornado watch. So if I kind of glance at my phone, that's why. But I'm really happy to be here with all of you today and build off of the wonderful work that's been happening around the country and previous conversations that have taken place over the years to improve preconception health. MCHB shares many goals with the organizations and stakeholders represented here today, and we look forward to expanding our work together to achieve better health outcomes for all women, infants, and families. UNC and their meeting planning team, the Dream Team, have designed a dynamic and energizing agenda over the course of 3 days, and I really hope you can take advantage of all the wonderful free content that will be coming out. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank all of the speakers and presenters for their time and sharing their expertise with us. We value your experience and the information you'll be providing, and I hope all of us can put it into action after the meeting convenes. I also wanted to thank the UNC Preconception Coin Project team, Sarah Verbees, Catherine Bryant, Erin McLean, and Suzanne Woodward, as well as their project consultants and contractors that have helped to plan and execute this meeting. It is clear how much hard work and thought you've put into it, so thank you. I look forward to continuing our dialogue and efforts together over the coming months and years, and want to thank you again for joining and for your participation over these 3 days. I'll now turn it back over to the Dream Team.
All right, and with that, let's begin panel 1.
Okay, awesome. I can see everybody. So in this session, a panel of health providers, women's health professionals, and people with lived experiences will discuss the nuances of preconception health. This session will feature a lively conversation from all of us across this diverse group of leaders about how we define these terms, what they mean to us, why they matter, and of course, what a future forward vision could look like. We'll be monitoring the chat and holding questions at the end. So feel free to put your questions, comments, thoughts in the chat, and we will have a discussion. And then also the speakers for this session, if you guys would like to, well, I'll introduce us and then everybody can go around. Dr. Nargis, Dr. Sarah Verbees, me, Elise, Jessica Haynes, who is now on the screen, Kennedy Bridges, and Rio Holiday will be the lead facilitator. And at this moment, I would like to say, take it away, Rio.
And of course, I'm on mute. Nothing like a virtual conference without some tech difficulties. Thank you and welcome everybody to the very first session. I am here as a graphic recorder and graphic facilitator to make the conversation visible to everyone. And I'm going to actually hand it to Sarah to give some context, and then she will pass it back to me.
Great, thank you. And Catherine's gonna just pull up a couple of quick slides. We are so excited to see everyone here and know that we still have more folks joining us. We had hoped to be with you all in real life person, but we were also realizing that we only had room for 80 and we can accommodate a lot more. So it's really exciting to have a really big table to welcome everyone today. So just wanted to take a minute to set the stage for this first conversation. Next slide. And just highlight a few things. So the case for health promotion and preventive care. So we know that, well, it's important for health systems and clinicians to focus on addressing risk factors during prenatal and postpartum care. And we know that those drive poor birth outcomes for women and infants. We believe that there are critical opportunities that are often missed to address modifiable risk factors for women, people themselves during routine preventive care. So people deserve high quality preventive care to optimize their overall health and well-being, whether or not they later become pregnant. And this is something that we mentioned before, and we want to just say this over and over again during our convening. It's really important to prioritize health and the ability to maintain an optimal state of health and well-being over the life course. Our whole lives, we matter no matter what age we are or what stage we are in, we matter, our well-being matters. And we also know that prioritizing health has the added benefit of setting the stage for a healthy pregnancy and a healthy family, if that's what if that is what someone else hopes for in their future. And that is also really important for people in actualizing what they want for their lives. So we want to just keep a lot of space open for both and thinking during our time together. Next slide. So traditionally, when we talk about preventive care, preconception care, there's lots of different, just wellness overall. There's lots of different kind of buckets or spheres where there are different experts and different types of providers or types of services. And it can be really easy for people working in each of these different circles to get very tunnel visioned about kind of their one issue. And all of these are very important. When we've talked to women and people of reproductive age, however, if you go to the next slide, the reality is that all of those things, they don't work in separate bubbles. They all really come together and are interconnected and interlaced. So we can't just talk about tobacco cessation and not also think about if a person has anxiety or if a person is maybe living in a violent situation. We can't think about exercise and activity if someone is experiencing pain with movement, for example. And so we've just realized that these are all intersecting and they're all important. And we also need to, one more click, understand that all of these are within a larger context, which is what we can call social determinants of health, what we can call justice, but giving people information or advice to do something when they don't have the resources, the support to act on it can cause pain and harm. And so we may talk about drink more water, stay hydrated, but if someone's water isn't safe in their home, then something that seems simple is actually not simple and is also a justice issue. So that makes our topic both simple and complex, but we can do hard things and we can take on hard things and do them well. Next slide. And this last slide is going to take us into our conversation. But we, as we said before, we really want to underscore the importance of reproductive justice and really want to lift up Sister Song and their definition of reproductive justice as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, to have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ria.
Great, thank you, Sarah. So I want to ground us in a couple of the things that Sarah mentioned: justice, social determinants of health, intersectionality, reproductive justice. These are big, big topics, complex topics that affect all of us. And I'm thrilled to be here today to support the conversation. And For those of you who might not be familiar with graphic recording, I am really here to help make visible three things. And I'm going to do this by listening, synthesizing, and then the part that you'll actually see is taking, documenting using words and images what is happening in the conversation. So I'm here to help make visible three main things. First is that we need to do things differently in order to create a different future. And one small way of doing that in this specific session is by bringing in visual learning and graphic recording and lessening emphasis on the written word, which some of you may know as one of the tenets of white supremacy culture. So at various points in the conversation, I will be sharing my screen. You'll see graphics. Next, we wanted to step aside to listen, really listen to new and different voices in the space. We have wonderful panelists bringing different perspectives, and by graphic recording what they're saying, we'll have an artifact to turn to in the future to make sure that we don't forget this conversation. And then finally, we wanted to anchor ourselves in the future. Our goal is not to start a conversation and get down in the dumps about all of the obstacles around us right now, but to really rise out and start our conversation in what we imagine to be possible. And so given that spirit of being grounded in the future, my first question for the group is, what are your wildest dreams in terms of having people in their reproductive years be healthy and well? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does it mean for women, communities, families? And as you begin to answer this question, I'll invite you to say your name once more and your affiliation. I'd like to start with Jessica or Kennedy, you can decide. And I'd love to hear from one of you first and then have you pass it to one of your teammates on the dream team. And Sarah is going to help keep track of who needs to speak and who will jump in to help manage. And I will be looking down because that's where my iPad is. So with that, Jessica or Kennedy, please take it away.
Hi, I'm Kennedy Bridges. I use the pronouns she, her, and they, them. To just briefly introduce myself, I am a UNC student pursuing a dual degree in social work and public health. I'm also a full spectrum doula, providing support for folks in labor, postpartum, abortion, really the full range of care. And so the way I would answer this question, I always go back to that definition of reproductive justice that Sarah shared. The human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, to have children, not have them, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities is so powerful. And I use that as kind of my guiding post for my vision of this work. But it's a very simple definition, but has huge implications because it requires intentional transformation of so many different systems, which can be daunting, but I see as something that's really hopeful if we are all kind of having this collective vision and moving toward this definition. So it implicates, the criminal legal system, child welfare, food and agriculture, education, housing, and maybe most of all, healthcare and insurance. And I think right now, what's on my mind is especially abortion access right now with the things that we've seen happening in Texas and everything. So moving toward that collectively with all of you would be my wildest dream. I'll pass it to Jessica.
Yes, that was awesome, Kennedy. I'm going to piggyback off of what you said shortly. But my name is Jessica Haynes. I am a part of the Show Your Love Today squad. I'm also the perinatal and lactation education coordinator here in Mecklenburg County. And I'm so excited to be here. I feel like I have so many dreams for us. I feel like we're on a trend now where health and wellness are becoming prioritized, especially with the help of social media. And I would love to see a world where everyone has access to healthy foods, recreation centers, parks, sidewalks, and all those things. A world where mental wellness is prioritized and normalized culturally and in the workplace, to be honest, where access to mental health services are also attainable. I would love to see breastfeeding normalized, especially in the Black community. And I also dream of relationships that are safe, filled with love, and supportive, whether that's with a partner, family member, or a friend. And again, I envision as well reproductive health and autonomy for all people, having the right to make the decisions about my body, and also equitable access to care without discrimination, that's inclusive in a way that's affordable, and that'll offer quality contraception as well. And for all people with vaginas to have the choice to not get pregnant, or to terminate a pregnancy. I know that was a mouthful. I hope I didn't step on anyone's toes.
Thank you, Jessica. And I just wanted to jump in and both share my screen now that I've gotten a few nuggets from folks so you can see what is developing. And for the panelists, can you just give me a nod if you can actually see my screen? Thank you. And I also wanted to pick up on what you said about not stepping on toes. That part of graphic recording is to be able to hold multiple truths at once and to be able to have multiple perspectives in one conversation so they can be on the page together and we can see what that is like. And so with that, will you please pass it to someone, Jessica?
Yes, I would love to pass it to Shamika.
Hi, my name is Shamika Tumblin. I'm also a part of the Dream Team, the Show Your Love Squad. I'm a project coordinator with City Match. I am also a local marriage and family therapist here in Nashville, Tennessee, as well as a full spectrum doula. So shout out to Kennedy, because I was like, yes, you and Jessica both. I do not want to repeat. So I will say, in addition to what both these ladies have said, is the understanding that there are boxes, yes, but we don't have to fit in the boxes. So making sure that people understand boxes are a way something the system has created to be able to keep track of the changes that are coming abroad. But the important thing is that we understand that box was created by someone so that they could keep track of data or keep track of something for themselves, but not for us as human beings to be able to be placed inside of. So the understanding to know that no one fits in a box, the systems that we are creating constantly, because although we say we want to dismantle systems, we know we're constantly creating them. The systems we are creating are to match the boxes. So we need to make sure that we are incorporating people within those systems that understand the boxes don't exist, so that our systems can hold and have a larger capacity for everyone. Because in order to have equitable care, the access that we're talking about, and to be able to promote healthy living, we have to understand there are no boxes. Something else I think that is a part of the big dream for me is the understanding that when we talk about creating healthcare teams, when we talk about creating teams, period, to be able to do work, we need someone across all fields and all spectrums, because there is not one single voice that represents any population. So we need to make sure that we're being representative of the people that we are here to serve. And the best way to do that is to have the teams that are serving them represent them. And if I were just to add one last point to that, it's the understanding that everybody's a lifelong learner, and to encourage that, and to make sure that when we are serving individuals, when we are creating teams, and we're talking to our colleagues, that we're talking to them from the perspective of we're lifelong learners. No one, like we love to say we're an expert, yes, but we're growing experts. There's always going to be something new to learn, and not to be afraid to learn that, not to be afraid to make mistakes, and to always understand that humility is a huge part of this work, and being able to apologize when we have done wrong, but use that not as an apology to stick where we are, but an apology to move forward and say, I now see where this may be going off track, or I now see how this care is no longer the care you need. So how do we move forward together? And I want to kick it off to Eilish.
Hi again, Eilish Neely, public health practitioner out of New York City. I've studied public health and I decided to go back to school, do the brave thing, go back to school for social work. So I'm currently in my second week as a social work student at Hunter College's Silberman School of Social Work. And I was just thinking while everybody was talking, I was thinking about, the wildest dreams question, because my dreams could get pretty wild. And so I thought about, I want to say, several years ago when I was 18 years old, one of my professors planted a seed. A part of our assignment for school, part of our grade was to go to the counseling department, and it was mandatory. So everyone had to go and have at least one session. And so I went, I'll be transparent, I did go, and it planted the seeds for me to understand, like, wow, that thing that happened to me before, it affected me in this sort of way. And how did that sort of steer my decision making when it came to relationships and sexual health and all of those sort of things. And so my wildest dream would be for all colleges to at least mandate, require, I guess require sounds a little bit nicer than mandate, but I'll say mandate for now, mandate at least one visit to the counseling department as a part of the students' freshman orientation. And if we want to get a little bit more spicier, it would be really important to incorporate that to all years. So at least one counseling session per academic year. And by saying one counseling session is just allowing folks to sort of like deal with their sort of bias and stigma and fears centered around mental health support, right? If I never went, I would have not known my possibilities and perhaps be a different person, not even be where I am today. So I'm super, super grateful and glad that my professor had that grandiose idea that changed the trajectory of my life. And I believe it's really important. I don't think we can really talk about health and public health and reproductive health without focusing on like the backgrounds, right? Because life will continue to happen around us and to us. And how do we deal with that, right? And I also, my even wilder dreams would be to incorporate its core competencies in elementary school, self-esteem building classes. I feel like that would definitely set the course for later on decision making, conflict resolution, relationship building, relationship development, sustaining, and also just the future of our future Americans, our future public health practitioners, our future superheroes that will shape the world and will be at their mercy at some point in time. So that's my wildest dream.
I'm going to toss the mic over to Nargis to weigh in on your wildest dream.
Good afternoon. I'm Nargis Farahi. It's so wonderful to be here, and I'm already just inspired and energized by everyone here. I'm a family physician and also provide perinatal care in and outside the hospital. I work at UNC in the family medicine department and also at a community health center here in Prospect Hill, North Carolina, so a rural community health center. And so my heart is in community health, and my wildest dream is that every person, every family, every community be fully supported to achieve optimal health and well-being. And that health and well-being would really be envisioned and defined by the individuals and communities we are serving, and based on shared values, on accurate information, on collective wisdom and knowledge. And I envision a world where all people are supported, not just to survive and kind of get through and make it, but to truly thrive and achieve their dreams. And so in my mind, this really requires kind of shifting power. And as someone who works in medicine and works in academia and also works in a kind of community setting, I can definitely see so many of those power differentials at play. And I just think kind of shifting power to communities, to particularly communities that have been marginalized by all of our structures, and especially within healthcare, is essential. And I think it really requires the transformation that Kennedy, Jessica, and others have expressed so beautifully. And I Sarah, or
I think, yeah,
might
I
the
think
last one?
I think we've done the first round on Wildest Dreams. So do we want, Rio, I'm turning it back to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Let me do a very quick orientation to some of the things that I have been hearing. First of all, this image of this woman in the tree, this actually came from Sarah's brain, but the credit where credit's due. What I'm hearing is this idea of folks who are in reproductive years, and all folks, really being both products of their roots and thinking about what are some of those roots. How do we address those? Talking about systems, talking about core competencies, ability to have access to mental health, safe and loving relationships, not being put in a box, teams serving, representing those who they serve, and reproductive justice as an overarching theme for much of this. And then y'all has started to get into the second question, which is fantastic, which is how do we get there? Really, you know, what do we do to get to those wildest dreams? And for this question, I invite you to really interact with the graphic that's on the screen, talk about how we can build towards it. Some things that folks have already started mentioning are this intentional transformation of systems, shifting of power, approaching things with humility and the learner's mindset. And this time, you're welcome to speak if and when the spirit moves you. Silence is also invited if you are still processing or if others have shared what you wanted to share. And again, Sarah will help keep us sorted out. If you want to jump in. And if you start talking at the same time as someone else, that's okay. We'll work through it.
I'd love to jump in and go first, you all. So Shamika speaking. And I think something I would like to take a stab at is the intentional transformation of systems. I think a way we can start with that now is supporting organizations that are already making that happen. We know there's power in numbers. If I were to name a few, we have Sister Song, there's City Match, not just because I'm a part of them, but the reason I'm a part of them is because they're doing that work. Also, we have organizations that are doing grassroots work, such as any community-based doula program. They are in the community, they're creating information, they're sharing knowledge. That also goes for our local health departments and organizations that are grassroots nonprofits who are within those communities as well. The university systems that are already creating those changes. Dr. Sarah, Suzanne, those that are hosting this conference are right there at UNC. So that shows us there that there's a university that is clearly putting money and power and people behind a vision that is worth, you know, not only going after, but a vision that's going to create changes within the future. And how do we continue to support that? How do we continue to not only encourage people to join those organizations and institutions, but how do we encourage people to be more knowledgeable about them? Because even if you don't become a part of the organization, having knowledge encourages individuals who need that help to find those organizations and those sources of assistance and aid. And not only that, but a part of creating access. And I like to say a lot of times, like, I'm like the mental health plug. It's not about getting all the certifications and getting all the education. It's about creating networks and knowing individuals within those areas so that when people come to you, you can send them to others and know that they're getting the assistance that they need and also getting the attention that they need as well.
I'll go. So just going off of Shamika's point about everyone having access, yes, to clean water, to adequate healthcare, to, you know, employers who respect them. But when you think of access, and what I mentioned previously is that I am now a student again, and I'm sure there are more other students in the audience as well. Access also means availability to quality scholarships. So I know I did the search, and let's just say I don't have any scholarships because first of all, you have to like sort of like dig so deeply for scholarships. And then when you do find some, they're not, you know, the awards are not so great to to offset the actual costs and rising costs of higher education. And so what would be great, and first, before I even go further, I just want to make a point that poor and low income is not synonymous with Black and brown. But I'm going to speak specifically for Black and brown. And if we want to talk about equity and having better quality of care, and folks, I don't want to use the word compliant, but I will use it in this moment, and to offer opportunities for more folks of color to be able to become practitioners, whether that's a midwife, a nurse, a doctor, a social worker. We have to sort of revamp how scholarships are being presented and who's getting them, and also maybe perhaps encourage folks to develop more scholarships with, I don't know, increase awards, because, are you gonna put forth a scholarship to say you're gonna give somebody $250 to go towards school when we know you need a little bit more than $250 to go to school? So just really rethinking that level of access, because that could be the very thing that decreases the amount of people of color going into these particular roles, which would then probably more likely offset the quality of care that our communities are receiving. And and when you think about like maternal child health, prenatal care, and all of that, with the folks who are dying in childbirth. So just like, what if we provided more resources and more money and more opportunity for folks who look like the folks who seem to be at the highest of the data of having preterm birth or miscarriages or what have you. So what would it look like if we increase the amount of scholarships, worthwhile scholarships, and also how much the scholarships are worth?
That was incredible. Thank you for that. I'm just going to build on that because you said a lot of the things that I've been thinking about. I think it requires really sustained investment in community-based organizations, those who are at the grassroots level, who really understand what's happening in context, like Sarah showed in that slide. All of those things are a part of what produce our health, but they're all in context. And I think people who are actually at the grassroots level, people who look like the people that they're serving, have the capacity to really make a difference and should be the loudest voices in creating that solution. And so for me, I think about that as, and people use this a lot, centering those who are the most marginalized. If we do that, everybody else is going to be just fine. If we recreate systems and really design thinking about tearing down all the barriers that have existed for the people who are most marginalized and flip the script on that, shift the power and pass the mic, I think we'll create the kind of solutions that can actually be sustained, that are culturally appropriate, that are evidence, all of those things, these best practices that we talk about.
Yes, I feel like you guys said all the things. I was snapping throughout. It was amazing. I agree. I think we also get there by reaching the most marginalized, and understanding where oppressions also intersect. Our overall health and well-being is shaped by an overlapping of factors like race, immigration status, education, income, ability, sexual orientation, etc. And I think to get there, organizations, lawmakers, and medical professionals should shift how they relate to the populations they serve. Question whether particular health needs of communities that face intersecting forms of oppression are being met. So not only just looking at how restrictions impact folks generally, but also how particular communities are impacted.
I want to build on what Kennedy and Jessica said about centering the margins and really flipping the script. And I think for someone who is kind of within medicine and also within kind of an academic setting, to me, one thing that I often think about is the importance of listening. And listening is critical, I think, on a big systems level, as well as on that individual one-on-one level with patients and families. I think, as has been said, like, communities that are most impacted by health inequities understand the root causes of those health issues and really hold the solutions. And so listening and really centering those voices and lifting up those solutions and supporting organizations that are already doing that work is essential. I think for healthcare systems and clinics, that also means community collaborations, partnerships, really kind of in true partnerships to help change our paradigms. So we are focusing more on healing, dignity, and true care, and not just kind of health services. And then on a kind of individual level with patients and families, really listening to the person there in front of you, really trying to kind of not just go in with your own agenda, but really kind of listen to that person's values, fears, concerns, their dreams, and then from there really engage in truly shared decision making based on that foundation of listening. And I think both on a systems level as well as on an individual level, that can make a really big difference.
Absolutely. I can't help it. I have to jump in. I'm a social worker too. And I also am still coming down from the high of listening to Sonia Renee Taylor, who spoke at an event yesterday. And, she really talks about how there needs to be that inside work too. And so I think about that, and if we're going to just get real, right? Like, when I look at myself and I judge myself, like, you look old, or you look blah, blah, blah. Like that, all that stuff that I do to myself manifests in the world. And so I think kind of looking at that mental health and like creating a space where we feel loved and valued outside of what we give to capitalism and society. I don't know, there's just something that's really resonating with me, and just the words that she talks about in terms of what does that radical self-love look like for all of us, and when we manifest that on the inside, how then do we actualize that? I also think that as much as I want to like run away from the academy, and I always thought I would be one of those small community organizations out there, I have to realize that I really need to be an academic activist. And that's not really as much fun, but it's really important because that's how we work to get those scholarships. And that's how we create classrooms that and professors that know how to teach better in racialized spaces and know how to think about what we're presenting. And I think that's the same in healthcare systems, right? I feel sometimes providers and people in that system get a little tossed around by that system, instead of also saying we have voice and we have power to also shift up, how we're being paid and kind of all the boxes we have to check, so I'm kind of like also to my colleagues out there in health, like rise up, because you know the care you all want to give, and we see how the systems are keeping you from bringing that and manifesting that forward. So also, I just have to say, this is my wildest dream right now. I'm living my wildest dream. And I just wanted to tap a couple of things to chat before we move on, because I wanted to honor that. A couple of other wildest dreams in the chat. One is that our struggles over abortion and family planning would be behind us. I think that really lifts up what Kennedy named in particular at the beginning. And then also Anne Marie from Ohio said, could we shift to a norm of wellness and a work week that allows us to spend time with family, friends, just for that care, cooking. And I think that kind of goes a little to what I'm thinking about with radical self-love too, is you got to take a minute to have time to breathe. So I wanted to lift up that from both Kay and Anne Marie, and then turn it back to you. And others keep jumping in. Shamika, take it next.
Well, something that you all have said, or themes that I've heard that I kind of want to bring attention to, and I think it's in the how do we get there. We have to understand that we're all advocates. And a huge part of our roles is teaching individuals to be self-advocates. So when I think about why I do or have the roles that I have in their intersections, being a full spectrum doula, being a therapist, those roles, I'm constantly helping individuals identify for themselves, as Dr. Sarah said, I'm helping them identify for themselves what internally is your motivation, or what is the change that you're making internally. And then how do we adjust that to understand, even if you can't change the people around you, how do you stop allowing them to hinder the change that you need to create within you? And how that goes on the healthcare system as far as being a doula, how can you not conform to the system and do the things that the system is telling you to do, but learn that even when the system is giving you pushback, how to use your voice and say, I know my body, I know what I need, and what I'm saying is what I need. And also the power in, if you can't provide that, let me know so I can go elsewhere. And we've taught individuals to say, if a doctor is saying, they aren't going to run certain tests or they don't agree with that, to start making documentations in your chart. So it's not a your word against their word. It's in the forms that are used within that system, it's noted this physician made this decision, even though the patient said themselves this is what they wanted. Another form of that also is in the work I do, being a reproductive advocate, reproductive justice, understanding, and especially using social media, because it's a platform I feel that is not going anywhere. Using that to give others the language that I've went to school and learned, the money I paid for. Alicia's talking about how do we make knowledge accessible. Those of us that have the knowledge, it's not for us to gatekeep. It's how can I share it? What organizations can I go into and share this knowledge with? If a community organization is hosting something, yes, I want to be paid for my work. But if the goal is to uplift that community organization within my community, guaranteed it's either going to be free or it's going to be at a reduced cost, because I know there's other places I can go into and charge a full rate and they can pay that and it won't hurt them at all. So how do we use ourselves as leverage and resources to offset some of the things that we're talking about?
The things you said really made me think about power. To me, that was the common thread of what the different examples that you gave. It's around identifying power, building power within our communities, those community-based organizations, but also using, for instance, the EMRs and charts that healthcare providers often use, using that to leverage our own power. And I think that's something that we don't think enough about, or think of as kind of a dirty word. Like don't hoard it, but share and build with others. Strategizing with others, like we're doing on this call, is something that will build power toward this collective vision that we have. So it's incredible.
I want to note that Karen from Ohio, hi Karen, said that science-based, evidence-based programs are important, but in order to make change, we need to allow for innovation and provide financial support for newer programs that seem promising but may not have the evidence behind them quite yet. Seeing some nods, yes, thank you.
I did want to jump in. I agree with that point wholeheartedly, just because of the work that I do on a normal basis, which is determined by data, right? And the data has not changed much over time. And so I often think, well, what could be done and what has not been done? And are folks scared to do it? So when I think about how do we get there, in all due respect to the folks who have paved the way for us, public health practitioners and health professionals, but I believe there could be more room given to us new folks coming in, like the new generation of public health practitioners who have ideas that might seem wild and not backed by data. But if you look at, like the age group of who is up and coming in these particular organizations, we're a reproductive health age, you're reproductive age. So it's sort of like we might have a little bit of insight that is not backed by data, but is backed by life experience. And so by tapping into your actual team, your actual staff, who have creative, innovative ideas, who actually might be the population in which you are trying to reach. Not abuse them, but definitely honor their voices.
Awesome. Looking at you, Rio.
All right. Yes, there was a lot of energy that I felt in the room, across the internet, and in the chat around that. And some of the big themes that I'm hearing are really around power, what it means to shift it and share it. And some of that includes sustained investment, thinking about what if we provided more scholarships and opportunity for those who look like us. And by us, I'm including myself as someone of reproductive age, who is a woman of color, in the group of people who are providing care. What if we shifted power to communities marginalized by structures and shared decision-making? What if we looked at data and thought about it as life experience? What if we understood where oppressions intersect? Because all of us are not just one thing. This gets back to up here. Boxes don't exist. No one fits in a box. They were created by systems. What if we had humility, and what if we listened? We also talked more broadly about this intentional transformation of systems. I mean, that's underlying everything. But some of what that could look like specifically is supporting organizations that are already there, having the folks who are inside the systems rise up, teaching others and learning how to use our own voices to advocate for ourselves, and creating networks. And then this, I just personally loved this quote. I think that fear is a very useful teacher. What hasn't been done, and are folks scared to do it? And I think that looking at that is partially how we get from this group of people in the blue all the way over to this this tree person. So with that, I'd love to transition us into our final question, which is really, what is an action item for everyone participating in this convening to take? What is your charge to yourself and to others in this space? And, you know, we started getting a little into action items, but the things that I just covered are still pretty big picture. And so I'd like to explicitly bring this down into tangible steps, ideas, pieces of encouragement, and invitations that folks may need. And also to remind us that these can be pieces of doing, things that we do. They can also be ways of being. So with that, again, I will just open it to whoever feels moved to speak first.
I was thinking about something that was told to me, which is honor your faculties. And what that means is go drink some water if it's been too long. Go give yourself a bio break. A lot of times we're thinking that, you know, the more we push, the more clients we see, the more meetings we take or calls we take after, you know, 5 o'clock on a weekday when we should be with our families will push us forward like there's something to be done, without realizing that there's always going to be something to do tomorrow. And so with that, I would just encourage people to take a nap, nap ministry, take a nap, eat well, you know, move your body in a way that is comfortable and fun and exciting to you. Prioritize your mental health. I think by honoring our faculties, it'll help us serve the community better. It'll also help us be at our highest when it comes to program planning, idea generating, applying for grants, right, to do more awesome work in the community. So an action step, keeping in mind everything that's here in this beautiful graphic, is to honor your faculties.
That was beautifully said, Eilish. We must take care of ourselves in order to take care of others. I would say to, like, in the workspace or in advocacy or wherever space you're in, to ensure that the voices you're serving are incorporated in your work. We should always strive to include everyone in our work and listen to them and what they want for their communities, and allow them to be the spokespeople for their causes, and not only listen to them, but collaborate with them as well.
Can hop in. In the spirit of social work and its emphasis on self-awareness and reflexivity, I would encourage everyone to learn more about themselves, to dig deeper in exploring your body and your mind, your sexuality, all of that. And I think this requires a bit of re-education, a bit of realizing what our sexual education systems and our health education systems have not taught us, and going out and finding the information that we need to make informed decisions about our health and well-being.
I think so. A charge that I'm taking on for myself is to continue to share the knowledge that I have, to continue to use the platforms that I have to grow them in sharing voices of others, and to use them to do work in fear, which means sharing stories that people often like to shy away from because they are ones that don't make you feel comfortable, whether that be talking about maternal mortality, talking about infant loss, and uplifting those communities and letting them know that they're not in the shadows, but there are people who are wanting to do the work, and understanding that without sharing those stories, we can't get the resources that we need. So continue to use myself in that way. I think a charge I would like to give everyone listening is not only taking a look at yourself, but a look at the organizations that you're a part of and the people you're doing work with. And are you all on the same team? Because oftentimes we work for organizations, but we're not all on the same team. And we have a problem with holding light to that and actually encouraging others to stand in those uncomfortable conversations and saying it's okay. Yes, we're in a time frame where you do what you do sometimes to make money, but the understanding of not all money is good money. And if I'm truly here just to get the money, then where's the impact? Like, what impact am I creating, and how am I truly changing the world for the better? And to pull others into those conversations. And this is where your network is important. Being able to help guide people to places where they can create impact and be on teams where they do have shared visions, and not be afraid of that. And last but not least, drawing on what Alicia shared, encouraging us to uplift those that are coming behind us and wanting to continue the work, and understand oftentimes we start things that we won't see completed. And I learned that from a mentor, is that whole, like, this is my baby and I don't want to let my baby out of my sight. But sometimes we know that oftentimes children learn, grow, and do things, not often because they've seen us, the parents, do it, but because they've seen others in our communities and in our village who weren't afraid to take steps that we may be afraid of. And then our children had the courage to do the same. Speaking broadly, I don't have any physical children, but I have a lot of babies that are projects that I've had to learn that with. It's okay to let others be the guide, because they can take something that you have sometimes farther than you can, and you'll never know if you're afraid of letting it go.
I'd like to build on both of those things. I think in terms of digging deeper and doing the inner work, both kind of in yourself and also kind of in the setting that you work in, I think, in healthcare, it is just so essential to acknowledge the ways in which our field perpetuates harm, has historically done that and continues to do that in the way that healthcare operates and the way that healthcare is provided. And it perpetuates harm externally to the people that we serve, and also internally to the people who work within the system. And so really, like, acknowledging that, trying to understand that, and then finding ways of really as Sarah said, rising up and trying to root out those oppressive structures and really be a voice for change, both from the inside and then, from the outside as well. I think that kind of constant unlearning of the things that we have been taught and those like false narratives and assumptions that have been a part of I think medical education for a long time is really essential, and that takes listening and reading and questioning and thinking critically and just being open, and that is essential. And I think, as an educator of future healthcare providers, I think that the next generation has the answers. They're asking the questions. They're thinking more critically. They're not just accepting the legacy that they're inheriting. And so really having the humility to acknowledge that I may have more clinical experience or be doing this work longer, but I don't have the answers, and I may not even always be asking the right questions, and just just shining a light on that vision from the people who have that kind of fresh lens and are bringing, I think, a really important kind of critical eye to so many structures that we've taken for granted.
Jessica, I want to give you space if you want to get in, but also no need to jump in if you don't want to. I will, I'm going to read a couple of things from the chat. This has been so great. Thank you everyone for sharing. So definitely had a lot of resonance in terms of also talking about the reality of pregnancy loss and infant loss and fertility challenges, primary, secondary infertility. There's so much suffering that's done in silence, and then when there's not enough information and it's discounted as that's not important. I think that's just really important to lift up, that it's the breadth of all of these experiences. And so I thank you for mentioning that. And also talking about listen, lead with love, and when the listening reveals an opportunity to advocate or change systems, to act on that. And so lots of yes on lead with love. And then also thinking about adolescent and primary care medical visits, EMR, intake forms, they've always had the usual health history. What else could we do to shake that up in terms of getting to know that person as a person and their goals and the challenges that are uniquely theirs. We're doing great on time, everyone. I wanted to also just put out a couple of other things since we're getting to tell people what to do. I really would love just to see organizations to look at their budgets, and when you're making a budget or writing a grant or a project, that as a first step, we just create line items to be paying other people to join the team, and think about just really bringing that on the team. That's something that you can do today, because we do budgets all the time, every day. I feel also that we tend to be in silos. So we know there's a lot of work going on around interpersonal violence, for example, but we're not always like at the same meetings. So I just wonder, how do we pull people together so it's a whole person care? It's definitely something that I wonder about. And then I just also want to underscore, I love that we've been talking a lot in this space and not use the word maternal, because I know maternal health matters, but it still feels like a lot of the funding and the investment is well, once you're pregnant, okay, now you're valid, right? Okay, now you've shown yourself to society, now we're fine, except, and now we're finally realizing that when we don't pay attention to postpartum moms, well, that's okay, maybe we should do that, right? Okay, fine, she's not pregnant, but we'll care. Oh, I'm gonna get on a soapbox. Anyways, this is just how I'm feeling. And so I would just love to be in a space where it doesn't matter if we've had children or if we're pregnant, that we can get services and support and care to just be the best us. and for all of the creativity and ideas and energy that we as people bring into the space. Thank you. Others, we have time. Any other jump in? Action.
And perhaps can I add an invitation, any other specific actions or as you're looking at this representation of what we talked about, is anything missing either from what I captured that didn't make it on here or that is coming up for you now? And part of this is, again, trying to honor the fact that we all process differently and in different ways. And just because we have entered and gone past questions doesn't mean that we can't come back and revisit. And I see folks looking faces on, which is wonderful. And I invite the same question into the chat. I see equity in infertility care, especially for Black and Brown women, continuums in care, achieving whole person care throughout the entire life course. Yes, yes, yes. And I will add some of these, but please feel free to speak into the space as well.
I believe we could add breastfeeding in there as well.
And are you thinking about as how we get there? Tell me more about that.
I guess it can go into the wildest dreams portions where it's normalized, and we get there by, increased education around breastfeeding, supporting breastfeeding families, creating breastfeeding friendly spaces, whether that be in churches or the workplace, et cetera.
Hearing silence.
There's one comment in
Sarah,
the chat. Do you want from Kristen? Include your community in the conversation to gain understanding of their perception of what they see as the priorities for preconception health, reproductive well-being, and equity. Thank you, Kristen.
I'll add that just hearing the word preconception, a word that I've been dancing around for the past decade while being a part of the work. Prior to, I've never heard the term before. And what I will say is to help folks really understand how their behaviors of today can affect their tomorrow, right? When we look at I'll use social media because I'm a millennial. So if you look at social media, you see folks doing all kinds of wild and wacky workouts because they want to achieve a certain aesthetic physically, but no one's really talking about how about I don't want to take a bunch of pills when I get 65. I want to retire without needing a walking aid or things of that sort. So I would like to encourage the collective to help folks really make those connections about their earlier behaviors, the health, I will say priorities they're not prioritizing, and how that could ultimately affect their likelihood to create a family or build a family or be healthy enough to stick around to see first birthdays and fifth birthdays and prom and college graduations. Yeah, I would say let's do better with that.
I think going back to the vision of reproductive justice that kind of started us off, and thinking about how reproductive justice is really rooted in this human rights framework, and thinking about each individual human being and kind of their dignity and honoring that. I think in terms of what we need to do to get there, I think we do also need like tangible things like universal healthcare and healthcare that covers a lot of the services that we're talking about, culturally sensitive lactation services, community doula care, that really covers care throughout the life course so that it's not fragmented and really facilitates integrated behavioral health care. And so I think that kind of access to universal healthcare is essential, but also what our healthcare covers and making sure that that's really like comprehensive and in line with those goals of reproductive justice is really essential.
To add to that, I know we discussed it. I'm not sure if it's, I tried to glance over the graphic, but making sure we promote interdisciplinary teams. Because even, like I said, if I think about the work I do, whether it's creating a birth plan or creating an app, like a plan of assistance within the hospital, because someone may not be having a live birth. I'm not just going in one particular role. I'm going in representing my role, yes, but there's a team behind me that I've already told the individuals, the family, these are the people that we need to make sure on our teams. If I'm working on a birth plan, doula, of course, making sure that the doctors are people who are in alignment with your goal, making sure that you have a mental health professional. Also, the community, what does your built environment look like? Do we need to be connecting you to other organizations so that you can get assistance or aid in that area? And then if I'm thinking about just in general, the work that we're doing, when we all introduced ourselves, this is an interdisciplinary team. All of us have those intersections, yes, but we all in our like day-to-day roles or that full-time role, we hold a different title and we do different work. But once again, we have a network here that we go back to and we're like, okay, these are people who represent organizations or represent roles that I know I can pull from if something were to come up, whether it be a speaking engagement or literally working one-on-one with each other. And then going back to those boxes don't exist. Interdisciplinary teams help us ensure that boxes don't have to exist, because as a group, we can see things from different lenses that one specific person cannot.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Rio, I'm going to turn it to you for the closing word.
Goodness.
And then back to our hosts to move it to the next session.
My closing words are goodness. This has been amazing and powerful. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all who are watching for your time and for the space that we are in, for the land that we are on, for the bodies that we're in that allow us to be here today and the people who got us here. This is a wonderful beginning to the whole rest of the conference. And so with huge thanks, I'm going to pass it back to whoever is moving us next magically.
That is me. I used to want to be Princess Jasmine growing up, but I'll take that. This is my opportunity. So right now, folks, we are headed into a break. It is 2:29. We're going to take a 5-minute break. We'll come back to this same link, this same room for the next session, windows of opportunity for improving care for women. And be sure to check out our Future Forward Jamboard to share ideas that you may have. I know we got the juices flowing, a lot was said, a lot needs to be processed, and even during the break, things may pop up. So definitely feel free to put any and all comments, ideas, good wishes to move the work forward on the Jamboard. And also don't forget to tag us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, #ShowYourLoveToday. So I'll see you guys in 5 minutes.
And just we'll be coming right back to this channel. So thank you, everyone.
Hi, Diana.
Hello.
Is my thing backwards?
No.
Okay. It's only backwards on my screen.
Okay.
It looks perfect.
All right.
Oh, yay, Christy's here. So for the moment, right?
So far, so good. They have sent everyone home from school. Everything shut down, but so far, so good. So.
So just so we know, I'm going to introduce you at the end of my talk, so it's just fresher in the mind as we start the panel. I will introduce all four of you, then we'll go to Diana, we'll run the video, and Diana will talk, and we'll go forward. Sound okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
And Kay, you might want to just turn your mic up a little bit more.
Ooh, is that better?
A little bit more.
Oh, let's see if I've got it. How about that? Is that any
About the
better?
same. A little bit. I mean, people can turn up your volume on their own as well. That's great. When we get started, I'm going to go off camera, but you're going to have Rio, who you've gotten to see work. She's going to be working away while you're talking. We'll kind of jump in and show her screen a little bit later in your session as you've kind of gotten some discussion started. Hi, Naomi, welcome.
And hi, everyone. This is Rio. Just so you know, I will wait for your verbal cue for whenever you'd like me to turn my camera on. And the way that you'll see it is that it's going to replace my camera like this. So you'll see the whole graphic recording.
Thanks, Rio. I will be sure to cue you.
And thank you to our audience for listening to our technical work. We do not have a fancy chime green room, but that's okay. Transparency.
Lakeisha seems to not be connected to the audio.
Naomi's having speaker. Naomi can't hear.
So we have everybody, we just don't have Lakeisha's connection. Naomi, you want to do a sound check?
You hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I had to log in and I think it's better now. Thank you.
And on Latrice's screen, it says Kay Johnson is connecting to audio. I wonder if that's anything.
She
So Lakeisha was trying to log in with my link. She said, I think she's on the wrong link. She was coming in as me, but I'm already on, so she was blocked. She's going to go out and come back in.
Okay. And Dream Team, and I think we're just going right into the session, right, Dream Team?
Yes.
Very excited. Awesome.
In another minute.
Gotcha.
Ready when you are. Anybody on the Dream Team who can send Lakeisha a fresh link?
I think Catherine is on it.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. We are excited to hear from Kay Johnson, Diana Ramos, Christy Allen, Lakeisha Daniel Robinson, Naomi Clemens for a session on a session titled Women of Opportunities for Improving care for women, where we will hear a conversation that is forward-thinking, highlighting Title X, Women Preventative Services Initiative, and Medicaid. This session will be facilitated by Kay Johnson, lead author of the original 200, it's been a while since I had to say this year, 2006 publication on CDC recommendations on preconception health. This session will identify areas where we have made significant strides forward in improving women's health in areas where more work needs to be done. This session will feature a panel of experts who will have a candid conversation about the levers for change and what needs to happen to push them forward.
Thank you, Eilish. Last time we were together in a meeting, I was introducing you, and
this is a full circle. Yeah, full circle moment.
It's a full circle. So here we go. I am going to be talking to you today about the history, and really I'm calling this Achieving Health and Equity for Women, Building on Success and Power of Our Movements. So I want to start with what I believe. I believe that equity in health or in life depends upon strong and well-implemented public policies. That every person should have the freedom to decide if and when to be a parent and have a family. I am a person who decided not to be a parent, not to have a family. I respect the wishes of all others. That reproductive justice will be attained when all people have the economic, social, and political power and the means to make decisions about their bodies, their sexuality, and their families. That our challenges won't be remedied by clinical practice changes, quality improvement, or individual behavior change alone. That to have equitable impact on the greatest number of women, children, and families, we must ensure effective and equitable public policies, programs, and services, and that the data are not now, nor have they ever been neutral. And thanks to Nancy Krieger for always reminding us of that. And I realized during the last session that this year is my 50th year in working on women's reproductive health and now reproductive justice. So I want to talk to you a little bit about advancing health and equity in the past 2 decades, about movement and evolution. And the next series of slides, there's going to be a set of things that are having a list of names down the left-hand side. That in some ways reflects my own experience. In some ways it reflects publications. It is certainly not a list of everyone who helped to shape the vision of the topic I'm talking about, but it's a sample, and it gives you an idea of the array of people and honors some of those who have contributed. We started out, and I'm just going to put the anchor at the 2006 recommendations that were reaffirmed in 2011 and 2014, where we said preconception care aims to promote the health of women of reproductive age before conception and thereby improving pregnancy-related outcomes. After the recommendations were published, I was the lead staff on the initiative and a co-chair of the panel, and I began to say it this way: to improve the health of women and any children they may choose to have. So we had 10 recommendations. They are broad categories. There were sub-recommendations and specificity under that. You can see the first one starts more with the individual. There's a cluster in the middle that has to do with care and the system of care. And then we got into public programs and research and monitoring on the end. This is a set of the milestones at the time when I was one of the leaders of the initiative, and we did a lot of work. We did 3 journal supplements. We issued national recommendations. We had work groups on clinical public health, consumer policy, and research issues. We worked on data sets and worked with a lot of organizations to build up visibility of the issue through them. We worked in 27 states, which doesn't exactly show on this slide. And then around the time that UNC took over as the backbone organization for the Preconception Health and Healthcare Initiative, I'm flipping a little bit back before 2014, as the headline says, but we had the Affordable Care Act coverage. We had a strategic action plan implementation, more work by CDC on getting a solid set of indicators, and the Show Your Love campaign, which many of us are now familiar with. The toolkit at Before and Beyond, the periodic practice bulletins, updates on indicators, and what we're honoring today, the preconception coin funded by HRSA and launched with Straight Teams and many of the rest of us involved, a book, thanks to Sarah and her authors, on preconception health and healthcare, and a very important article on evolving the preconception health framework this year. Again, shaping the vision for Well Woman Care has been going on a lot at the same time. A list of people there who have been visible leaders in this effort, but not everyone. And my apologies if you're a leader in any of these and I didn't put your name up. And then Senator Barbara Mikulski, because she was the reason that we ended up with women's preventive services in the Affordable Care Act. Thank heavens for that. And so that aim to do every woman, every time, attention to the life course to women's wellness, to have a content of care defined by experts where it had not been before, to have federal guidelines reflect what experts determined was appropriate, and have periodic updates with a focus both on reproductive health that was particular to women as well as their health overall, a recognition that access and quality varied by race, ethnicity, income, and insurance status, and a recognition of the power of guidelines and their implementation. So on August 1st, 2012, almost a decade ago, 47 million women who had insurance got coverage for a package of women's clinical preventive services without cost sharing. That includes well woman visits and preconception care. And Diana Ramos is later going to talk to us about the Women's Preventive Services Initiative, which is an outgrowth of that effort. But I want you to be thinking about how we could drive more effective implementation of this coverage. We've had an initiative called Bridging the Chasm Between Pregnancy and Health over the Life Course that came out with a national agenda publication this year, and you can see the names of those people who are co-authors on the agenda, but there were more than 70 stakeholders who came together across this process and talked about a 6-point priority agenda about eliminating institutional and interpersonal racism in health institutions, about infrastructure support for community-based organizations, team-based care on a holistic basis, expansion of Medicaid coverage and Medicaid performance, systems to preserve maternal narratives and data across providers, and an alignment of research with women's lived experience, a really broad set of issues that it'll take that and more, obviously, to bridge that chasm. We have a group of leaders who've been shaping the vision for reduced maternal mortality and pregnancy-related deaths, and you can see the names of many of those and some of those who are with us today, and I've included celebrity Serena Williams for her visible role in all of this. But again, if your name should have been on there and I missed you, I apologize. It's a sample. This movement has been accelerated by Black women, particularly in medicine and politics, and it includes members of Congress, national experts in public health, leaders, and an array of private organizations such as the Birth Equity Initiative. And they've been calling for an end to excess and preventable pregnancy-related deaths among Black birthing people, expanded Medicaid postpartum coverage, improved access and quality with more culturally congruent, unbiased workforce, to having those care teams, again, those will come up again and again, and addressing structural and institutional racism. And we have those who've been shaping the vision for reproductive justice over decades with, again, an accelerating pace of this movement and its visibility. I worked many, many years ago, back in the 1980s, with Billy Avery, who taught me a lot about this before we had this wonderful term for it circulating so widely. And you heard earlier, Sarah and others on the first panel talking about the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, parent children in safe and sustainable communities, to think beyond the limits of reproductive health and the reproductive rights movement, which was more about contraception often, to understanding intersectionality, to centering the most marginalized, and to addressing historical and current systemic racism in policies and in practices. So that leads us to the evolution of this preconception health concept. So from that article I mentioned earlier, talking about how the movement in preconception health advanced our understanding. But since that framework emerged around 2006, the social movements and changes within our healthcare system have changed our discussion. There's an increasing discussion about the importance of and barriers to reproductive and bodily autonomy, the relevance of structural inequalities and social determinants of health, and the need for greater attention to gender and race equity, which in turn points to the opportunities to involve the preconception framework to center gender and race equity, as well as to recognize the multidimensional and intersectional context in which reproductive health outcomes occur. And I think as we're here today to talk about future forward, we've got to take this to heart, and we've got to think about how our work reflects this future direction and evolution. So many of you know that famously Maya Angelou is quoted as saying, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better. So I would say now is the time. We know better, so let's do better to improve women's health. This is a time to go farther to do better. What we have done in the past has often been our best effort, but it's been limited by incrementalism, by the socio-political context, by not reflecting women's voices and not acknowledging and addressing bias and racism, and not sharing power with women, families, and communities. There are a lot of data about unequal treatment. These are from a Kaiser survey, and I'm not going to go through the details of this, but if you look on the left, it's by insurance status, and what you can see is for these topics about whether or not the provider gave the woman counseling about these sexual health topics before she was pregnant in a routine visit, you can see that the privately insured women got more on contraception and sexual history, but then the Medicaid women were asked more about HIV and sexually transmitted infections. That, to me, is a reflection of bias. And if you look on the right, the examples where, again, for the Black women, getting less on contraception but then thinking about how the white women not asked so much about their sexual history, whether or not they have exposure to HIV or STIs. Again, to me, a reflection of bias. I'm going to pick up on this graph on the right. This is from PRAMS. This is a data about preconception advice and services. I want you to notice the scale is only 8, so it's not like many women are getting this at all. But you can see that if anyone's getting it, it's more likely to be a white woman. And this is another thing I want to say about these data and the PRAMS data. We are often using our data from PRAMS that focus on women's behaviors. Did she smoke? Did she do this? Did she use drugs? Did she do that? We're not often focusing on the data in PRAMS that tells us about unequal treatment. And we need layers of change, recognizing the role of racism in access to care for Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, improvement in coverage and benefits, implementation of practice guidelines. I've just shown you 3 slides where we can see that practice guidelines are not uniformly being implemented in the preconception period by race, by income, by insurance status. The adoption of anti-racist and anti-biased approaches by all types of providers, shared decision-making and patient-centered care, and the design of quality improvement approaches that focus on equity, not just measure disparities at the end of a generic process. So what's the context for our policy and programs today? Childbearing people need basic supports like family leave and income support to offset social determinants. We need to assure access to quality and equity in the care across the lifespan. The Affordable Care Act has been very important. It has to be better protected and implemented. Medicaid expansions are needed, they're essential, but we also need Medicaid performance to improve. The Title X family planning is critical for low-income women in particular, but it's often threatened. Community health centers are serving 1 in 10 low-income women with a full range of primary care across the life course, but we don't give them very much of our time and attention in terms of improving the care that is being delivered there. The Title V Maternal and Child Health Block Grant is in every state, but it's often underutilized for women's health. and access to abortion is threatened by judicial and legislative action and is already more limited for low-income women, particularly those covered by Medicaid. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. I just want you to focus your attention on, first on the left, that the green is Medicaid, and that 40% of low-income, non-elderly women are covered by Medicaid. And over on the right, in terms of citizenship, that a third of the non-citizen, non-elderly women do not have health insurance. You can see an array of flow in between, but particularly in the middle, the role of Medicaid for women of color. Medicaid has a lot to do with financing women's reproductive health. It's the single largest source of public funding for family planning. It far overshadows the scale of Title X, which is more important in terms of infrastructure. But whether we're talking about the family planning and preconception services financed by Medicaid, the prenatal services, the birth services, the postpartum and interconception care services, not all of the things listed are uniformly provided, so we don't have equity across states. And we don't have some things that we really want, like infertility tests for these low-income women, only covered in 9 states, doula services in a handful of states. Interconception care for high risk, we've worked with more than a dozen states, but we don't have a good model out there yet. A lot of us are focused on expanding Medicaid postpartum coverage, but we've got to make the whole continuum work and deliver the care that women need and deserve. And when there are birthing people who are in Medicaid, and it's half of the births are financed by Medicaid, we really need to make that system work if we're going to ensure equity. I want to talk for a moment about the role of Title X family planning in preconception health. Obviously, core family planning services, including reproductive life plans and family planning methods and services, as well as pregnancy testing and counseling, are really an important part of preconception health. But they've made a commitment to more, such as offering basic infertility services or STI and HIV testing, counseling, and referrals, and screening and referrals for substance use, as well as other things that you see here on the list. And I'm really impressed. If you go to look at the Office of Population Affairs website, you will see their commitment right now in this administration to assuring quality that leads to improved reproductive health outcomes and overall optimal health. So really, they are thinking about this health and wellness aspect and their role in it. There are more than 24 bills introduced in this session of Congress about maternal health, and a similar number introduced in the last Congress. When you download the PDF of my slides, you'll get a complete list of the pending bills. But I wanted to show you the buckets. So there's a coverage bucket, particularly about Medicaid expansions, but also emphasis on things like immunizations and dental care and the comprehensive nature of the benefits. Quality, whether it's quality improvement collaboratives and data, or workforce expansion and training, or new innovative payment models or care coordination models, and grants to states to implement best practices such as those about AIM, which Christy is going to talk about later. And then there's a focus on social determinants of health, which calls for an interagency task force and an array of topics, including climate change and incarceration and the other things you might typically associate with social determinants, and reports from a variety of agencies, as well as direct grants and technical assistance to community-based organizations and programs that have long been doing the work. We heard the first panel calling for that. There's money in the Momnibus for that. So I want to just say we need to be working across the life course continuum. We really need, some of us are focused on one aspect of this or another, and there are a lot of connectors between the items that I put up here as just forces on the continuum. But if we want women's wellness across the life course, we need to think about the full array of these things and how these various aspects fit. As Sarah Berbice mentioned earlier, you know, good to focus on this postpartum coverage, but are we going to get back to focusing on well woman care and focusing on the woman herself and her own well-being across the life course continuum? So I want to thank you. And that's me when I was 18 and I was a young community activist in reproductive health and needed a lot of family planning services from a Title X clinic. And I honor the girl that I was in doing the work that I continue to do. So I'd like to introduce the panelists. I'm going to introduce all four, and then we'll begin with the panel. We are really honored to be joined by Dr. Diana Ramos. Dr. Ramos is the Assistant Deputy Director for Chronic Disease Prevention and the Center for Healthy Communities at the California Department of Health. She's also an adjunct assistant professor at the Keck University of Southern California School of Medicine. Dr. Ramos serves as the chair of the ACOG District 9, which includes California. She serves as the co-chair for the Women's Preventive Services Initiative Implementation Committee, and she's on the executive board of the National Hispanic Medical Association. Her areas of expertise include child health, social determinants of health, wellness, quality, improvement, and Dr. Ramos has contributed to numerous articles, lectures, and in both Spanish and English, and her recent awards include the 2020 University of California Irvine Latino Excellence and Achievement Award, the 2018 National Hispanic Medical Association Fellow of the Year, and an ACOG District Service Award. She received her medical degree in OBGYN training from the University of Southern California. She received her MBA from the University of California Irvine and her master's in public health from UCLA. Christy Allen is the Senior Director for Quality Improvement and Programs at the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, where she provides clinical support to and supervision of the Alliance for Innovation on Maternal Health, known as AIM. Prior to this role, Christy served as the Associate Director for Clinical Quality for ACOG, as a Quality Coordinator for a Planned Parenthood affiliate, and as the coordinator of a statewide Medicaid program for people with substance use disorders and pregnancy. In the clinical part of her career, Christy practiced as a clinical bedside nurse for over 20 years in adult pediatric, NICU, and inpatient obstetrics, as well as a lactation consultant, and she holds an advanced degree in health policy. Lakeisha Daniel Robinson has 20 years of experience in collaborating with healthcare organizations and federal and state entities. As the Director of Maternal and Child Health Services at IBM Watson Health, she leads technical assistance and change initiatives focused on improving outcomes, delivery, and access in maternal and child health. On behalf of the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, she leads efforts to improve the capacity of Medicaid and the Children's Health Insurance Program. She co-chaired the National Quality Forum effort on maternal morbidity and mortality, and which was charged with developing a measurement framework to focus on short and long-term strategies to measure maternal mortality and morbidity. And prior to joining Watson Health, she served in the Division of Quality and Health Outcomes at the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And in that role, she led the launch of the Maternal and Infant Health Initiative. A lot of her work is well known to you. You just didn't know she did it. She did it quietly as a Fed. And Naomi Clemens is a Senior Technical Advisor at John Snow, Inc., and her work at JSI includes family planning, maternal child health, and other topics. Naomi has over 20 years of experience in the field of MCH, and her work focuses on addressing the drivers of health disparities that perpetuate poor outcomes experienced by women, children, and families. Much of her work supports national initiatives, supporting systems improvement and change that promote community-driven and centered strategies. So thanks to you all. I turn it over to Dr. Ramos and the video.
Great. Thank you so much, Kay, for that wonderful background. And I am honored to be here with my esteemed panel and to be able to share with you information on WPSI and really understand what a critical role we all have in helping expand women's health through WPSI. So let's get started. I thought for those of you who are visual learners like me, a video would be a great way to start. So I will turn it over to our tech masters.
Clinicians work hard to provide the right preventive care. Because when women are healthy, communities thrive. And yet, nearly half of the women in the US are not receiving the life-saving preventive care they need. Clinicians often don't have the trustworthy and efficient tools and resources they need to prioritize care for patients. Understanding these challenges, we developed the Well Women Chart, an easy-to-use summary of preventive services recommendations based on age, health status, and risk factors. The Well Woman Chart outlines recommendations by the Women's Preventive Services Initiative, WPSI, along with the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force and the American Academy of Pediatrics. The WPSI was launched by HRSA and ACOG to develop comprehensive, cutting-edge, and evidence-based recommendations that fill critical gaps in women's preventive services guidelines. Our trustworthy recommendations address pressing and often overlooked health needs and help increase access to quality care. The WPSI's recommendations are based on a rigorous review of evidence and collaboration from a broad coalition of healthcare experts. Use the WPSI's recommendations and Well Woman Chart to address preventive health needs at every age and stage. Because when women are healthy, communities thrive.
Thank you. So that was just a quick, brief background on what WPSI is. When we've done surveys with other meetings, we find out that up to 80% of our audience members don't know what WPSI is. So I am making you all WPSI ambassadors today. This is an initiative that really can change the playing field for women's health. We can not only promote quality care, but more importantly, help improve equity among all women of all ages, races, ethnicity. The QR code behind me, I highly encourage you, and I won't be offended if you click on there, and you're going to actually get to see what WPSI is all about. And it is a wonderful resource for recommendations for health, preventive health services from all across the ages. So from adolescents all the way to postmenopausal women. The beauty about WPSI is because they're HRSA-backed recommendations, they actually qualify for reimbursement. So for your healthcare provider, many times we hear, we want to be able to provide the care, but one, we don't know what it is, and two, how can I get reimbursed? Well, this is where WPSI really fills that gap. So I encourage you, take a look at it. And there was another slide, I don't know if we can continue on to it, but you're going to see that because WPSI spans the life course of women's health, we really are making an impact not only on the current generation of women, but on the future generation of women. For those women who choose to become pregnant, their stress, everything that they bring in their being to their next child, if they choose to, is going to impact their health. And this is where WPSI, here it is, plays a role. And again, I'm a visual learner, and you saw it's preconception health going on to prenatal care to wellness and health in general. But the most important thing is that if a woman chooses to become pregnant, I heard the conversation, definitely, it's not a choice for everybody. But the one big important thing to realize is that we are promoting then healthy families and healthier communities. If I can have the next slide. And here you are, this is what that Well Woman's Chart is. And really the critical piece is that it's available for everyone to see. It's on the website there, womenspreventiveservices.org, womenspreventivehealth.org. Go on there, share with people that you interact with, and let them know this is a recommended preventive service for you. And the final piece that I will leave is that we are in our second cycle of granting. So we received a 5-year grant, and now it's just been renewed. And there's an opportunity to make a difference in what is going to be covered. So for all of you who are saying, how can I make a difference? This is it. Go on to the website. And right now there's open comment period for breastfeeding services, for counseling for sexually transmitted infection, and for overall Well Women preventive service visits. So we want to hear the comments, because this is what's going to be used to say, yes, we want to continue with this preventive visit or whatever the service is, or not. And then if there is something else that you feel that should be covered for women, it doesn't matter, the age, whether it's reproductive age, postmenopausal, women who are older, please let us know. You can actually provide that input. So this is your opportunity. Help us out, promote Women's Preventive Service Initiative so that we can promote health and really level the playing field for everybody. Help us make health for the health, the women's health, an equity area, because once we have the standards, nobody can say, I don't know. It's going to be a matter of promoting. So thank you for the opportunity to share about what the Women's Preventive Service Initiative.
Diana, thank you so much. We all need to know more about it, and we all need to follow your progress. And thank you also for staying on time, so we have room for the other panelists. Okay, let's go. Let's go next. Christy.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Christy Allen, and it's an honor to be here today in such good company, both the attendees and the panelists. I am also with an ACOG-based program. It's known as the Alliance for Innovation on Maternal Health. We're going to call it AIM, nice and short. The AIM program was implemented in 2014 and is now in its second cycle of funding. It is a cooperative agreement between the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists and HRSA, and it is a federally funded program focused on reducing preventable severe maternal morbidity and mortality across the United States. It started as a relatively small program. The goal was 8 states. We now have 41 states and the District of Columbia enrolled in the AIM program, and we expect to have all 50 within the next year or so. AIM works by working with state-based teams, perinatal quality collaboratives, and a variety of other community partners, organizations, et cetera, who work on the ground in facilities and outside of facilities implementing patient safety bundles. Patient safety bundles are not new guidance. They are best practice guidance for specific clinical conditions, such as hemorrhage, hypertension, and the things that we know actually cause harm and sometimes death to pregnant and postpartum people. The bundles that we are working on presently in AIM really do extend across the care continuum in a way that the earlier bundles did not. For instance, cardiac conditions and obstetric care, which was released this month. I share that because I think it's very important that sort of historically some folks have known AIM to be hospital or labor and delivery unit based, but cardiac conditions generally tend to impact people up to a year postpartum, and we know that they also disproportionately impact Black and Indigenous people. So there is a real focus in the work that we're doing on both reevaluating our existing materials and then looking at how we move forward, spanning the care continuum. While it's traditionally, I think, thought of as a maternal health program, as the name would indicate, it affects people in planning next pregnancies. The impacts of their birth affect them across the lifespan, and we recognize that. I think another foundational aspect of AIM that has evolved and grown in the last few years is a focus on equity and recognizing that equity is not a separate endeavor from patient safety and quality improvement. I own that I'm a quality improvement geek from way back. Everything I do is an improvement cycle to see if we can do it better, including grocery shopping. So I own that that's the tool that I know, but I see bundles as a tool as well. A patient safety bundle is not the solution. It's a tool to move towards that. And so it's critical that we include equity in that, not as a separate endeavor, not even as a separate bundle. So what we've been doing is taking those patient safety bundles that some may know and some may not, and integrating concepts of equity and respectful care into all of them. For instance, when we talk about data, are we disaggregating data by race and ethnicity? There's a lot of different ways to look at these processes and to roll equity in as a fundamental concept. And that's part of what we're working to do in AIM. We're very excited to be expanding those supports to state-based teams. That's one of our big focuses over the next year in particular. Today is the first day of our fiscal year 4 of our 5-year agreement, and where it's clean slate, very excited. But part of what we're working on is both getting the word out about what AIM is out in the communities, making sure that the community voice is present when bundles are being developed, having patients and those with lived experience being able to give feedback and input on that, and then also amplifying the work and the outcomes that these state teams are having on the ground, both successes and barriers, to allow people to learn from each other and have those connections forged. I could talk about AIM all day, I do, but I'm gonna enter in the chat here is a link to our website, and please stay tuned. We have some social media coming about this year that didn't exist in the past. I would say WIPSI is a little more developed than we are with their fabulous video you all saw, but I am very excited about the work we're doing and however we can best support that continuum of care in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate that update on AIM. A lot of people have heard about it. I think a lot of people don't know the details that we've talked about. Let's go next to Naomi.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Naomi Clemens, and I don't represent an initiative, and I don't represent a program. I represent just one perspective. And I also want to kind of circle back to one of Kay's slides, because it was one of your first slides, Kay, where you identified what you believe. And that's what I represent, is kind of sharing with you all my beliefs. There's so many things on that slide that I agree with. I agree that data is biased. I agree that clinical practice change, quality improvement, and individual behavior change are not going to remedy the problems that we're seeing, and are not alone going to improve the health outcomes that we need to see and bridge the disparities that people of color are experiencing on a daily basis. I want to lift up communities and community centering. A lot of our work, we say we're centering. What I'm realizing through my 20 plus years in public health is we say we're centering, but still their voices, community voices, are not being heard. I was on a call earlier today with a Healthy Start program that was doing some phenomenal work that was completely outside of the box of what we would typically think of in public health. They were working with a housing authority. And public health is one of those initiatives that I am inspired by, because their work is community-based and it's ground truth. But this program partnered with housing authority. They went beyond making a referral. Referrals are now becoming transactional in the world of social determinants of health. And my aspiration is that we move from transactional referrals to actually partnering and doing systems work at a meso level and developing meaningful and productive partnerships with these non-traditional stakeholders like housing authorities, and really ensure that services are wrapped around and integrated. And we need to redefine what access means for people of color and for women of color. A food voucher is not necessarily access by giving it to them, given their competing priorities in their life. I think that's really all I want to say, Kay, and I know there's other questions, but since I'm just representing me, I don't want to go on and on.
Thank you, Naomi. I appreciate that. And we'll look forward to more of your input in the cross-panel discussion. So, Lakeisha, tell us more.
Sure. So, I think I have the fortune of coming last after the other panelists that I'm happy to join today. In that, I'm supposed to talk a bit about financing, right? And, how that makes all of this happen. Over the last several years, there have been a number of investments and initiatives focused on examining strategies to improve care delivery and ultimately health outcomes. Kay mentioned a number of efforts over the last, number of years. Many, however, kind of propelled, at least by the federal government, by the Affordable Care Act provisions. Kay mentioned that I work at CMS, and we focused on laying the foundation of an infrastructure to really kind of assess it within the Medicaid program, but certainly across the health delivery system more broadly, those quality measures that would help us to assess, what does it look like on the ground? How are our systems performing? And, so we have that foundation. I think the other components that have happened over the last 10 years or so have related to the care delivery models, and I'm at home, so that's the dog. The care delivery models that have been put in place to improve access, improve care delivery more broadly, kind of improve the coordination. Recently, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation funded grantees to look at the maternal opioid use model, or to develop strategies within the maternal opioid use model. While that is focused on opioid use, it really provides the opportunity to look at infrastructure, to look at the data systems that are necessary, to look at quality measures, to think about what, I think Naomi mentioned social determinants of health and integrating with housing and other non-traditional agencies. It provides that foundation. Certainly, the expansion of postpartum coverage in Medicaid is another one of those really important levers. However, there's still much more that needs to be done. We need to advance the measures that I mentioned, to look more deeply at equity, to look at how changes that have occurred in terms of quality, how they're affecting individual subgroups of people or specific subgroups of people. Certainly, we've seen that there have been, with the expansion of coverage, that we've seen improvement in health and health outcomes. But when you look a little deeper, sometimes the data does not show that all, kind of boats have rise with the tide. So what more then do we really need to do? Financing is certainly important so that we can create those strategies, the infrastructure, the coordination that needs to happen between all of these various parts of our ecosystem. It's certainly not just about healthcare. It's really, all of those things that impact individuals and ultimately kind of impact what those outcomes look like. So I think we are at a new frontier at the moment with particular emphasis on equity and looking at disparities. And so I think it's time for us to think about, how we put the dollars in those places that will help to further advance those initiatives. I'll pause there.
Thanks so much, Lakeisha. Well, I think everyone who's in the audience now knows why we are joined today by these individual women leaders and all that they represent. They each have a lot more to say than they were given in the 5 minutes that they were allowed for the opening of the panel. And we're now going to just try to look at and cross-fertilize some of their ideas and their knowledge around a few questions. So I guess my first question, just given where we are and the focus of the meeting, is about, thinking about the Preconception Health and Healthcare Initiative or the other movements that I mentioned. What progress have you seen? What progress excites you that we ought to be carrying forward? Obviously, Women's Preventive Service Initiative one, but tell us a little bit more about how the things that you've talked about, reflect progress and things that we need to carry into the future, the sort of build back better idea. I'd like to go first, Diana?
Sure. Well, what progress? I am so pleased, and I saw my name in a couple of your slides as to people that have been in the preconception health movement from the beginning. And I can honestly say I have been there for a very long time, since it was an idea and a vision. And I can tell you from Dr. Jeannie Connery's presidency at ACOG that her vision was every woman, every time, and really women's health across the lifespan. And so what progress has happened is I am so pleased to see that the Women's Preventive Service Initiative has actually become a reality. And now that we're in our second grant area of 5 years, so we have 5 more years, so it'll be 10 years, we're moving along and really trying to promote women's health preventive services, because so much of the time we're focused on treating disease instead of preventing disease. And so this is the opportunity to do that across the lifespan. So for me, I've seen an immense amount of progress. I've been at the table with you, with Sarah, with a lot of the long-term players, and it pleases me. We've come a long way, but we still have a lot more to do.
Thank you for mentioning Jeannie Connery. She certainly did help all of us see how this could become reality through her practice and her leadership at ACOG. What are others thinking about progress going forward? What are we building on from this preconception movement going forward?
Hey, I'll jump in and just share what I'm excited about. I'm very excited about the language of preconception and health and life course approach being used at the same time in conversation with each other. It is comforting to me because I feel that is where the hard conversations of racial equity and reproductive justice is going to take place. And the issue of access and exploring more deeply and more profoundly what access looks like. It's also important to me because Life Course is about the next generation, and that we know that this generation of women and birthing people are going to be impacting the next generation. So we need to make an investment in communities and how systems and structures are affecting them. But I'm just really excited about how preconception health and life course is being lifted up again. I feel like it's had its peaks and valleys, and it's coming up again. And that, the Maya Angelou quote that you showed, what's done is never done, because social movements is changing our context every day. And that means that we need to do better every day. And we need to be thinking outside of the box.
Thanks, Naomi. Others?
How do you follow that, right? So we do have to continue to build on what we have done, in the past. As I kind of left off, I think we're at this moment in time where we can have the conversations more openly. I think that's really important. When we can talk about and point to the issues that impact women and birthing people, and kind of that life course perspective, having that open conversation and thinking about how that factors into and can be addressed by policy. So I think the openness of the time, I think, is what is exciting for me at the moment. The bright minds now need to kind of come together to think about, how we take what we are hearing in terms of lived experiences, as well as, other parts of our system, and, kind of shape what the next frontier looks like in terms of covering care, incentivizing appropriate care, ensuring that training includes all of the things that we've talked about, so far today.
You want to jump in on this question, Christy? Do you want to wait for the next one?
I'm happy to jump in just briefly, and sort of recognizing that I wear more than one hat at ACOG. I'm taking off my AIM hat to talk about policy for a moment, which is to say that I think that one of the benefits both of the programs that have been discussed today and some of the innovation that's been discussed today is you are all absolutely correct. QI is not going to fix this quality improvement. Either is purely focusing on social and structural drivers of health, either is purely focusing on data. It all has to be so integrated. And I think that's one of the pieces that I found sort of magical in the work that we're doing in AIM, that we're able to bring people together, because when we bring them together, we're talking about patient safety bundles and implementation. But what happens is those conversations evolve. I wouldn't even say it's not devolving, it's evolving into where we're talking about policy, because to the point of, I believe there's a message in the comments that we'll probably circle back to, but talking about like the differentiation in coverage just from Medicaid program to Medicaid program, that's something that a lot of providers aren't even aware of. They know what's covered in their silo, to use the word that I think gets overused. We just know what's happening in our little neck of the woods. And I think some of the magic happens from policy, from centering those engaged who should be engaged, who should be telling us what we need to be doing better, by bringing folks together. And I think that that's one of the magical pieces of looking at preconception health and the rest, that it is a continuum across the lifespan, but we also can't fix it with one piece in that continuum. It really has to be integrative. So.
Absolutely, thank you. So I want to pick up on Jackie's question for a moment and then come back to some of our other panel questions. But Jackie, if I understand your question correctly, it's really about insufficient reimbursement, because I don't think they would ever say they're partially paying. They would just say they've set a rate. And what we know is that Medicaid rates are below Medicare rates and below commercial payer rates, and they are below, often providers tell us that they are below cost, not just the usual and customary rate that the provider sets, but that they are in fact below cost. So this inadequate, insufficient payment rates, thanks for the affirmation, Jackie, that we got this right. Again, when I was the chair of the Secretary's Advisory Committee, the committee kept trying to put a recommendation about Medicaid payment levels into our report to the Secretary, and I just had to remind them, I mean, really almost quarterly for 2 years, that the Secretary is not in charge of Medicaid payment rates, and there really wasn't much the Secretary could do about them. And so it is a core dilemma. It is a battle that I think that providers and providers associations help us fight on a state-by-state basis. I think if we can have consumers understand that sometimes a service isn't offered because the person isn't going to get paid or they can't afford to offer it, it shifts the focus more toward the policy and less toward frustration and anger with the provider themselves. So I think consumer education around the advocacy and policy context, and really having us understand, if we think about the whole, that larger construct of saying, that there are social and political factors that are driving these inequities, and this is one of them. Lakeisha, you've seen this up close and personal. Anything else to be said about Medicaid payment rates?
Yeah, no, that variation is very real, from the types of pumps that are fully covered, and to those that are only partially covered. And I think you kind of hit it on the head with, there's that variation. And I like what you said about shifting, shifting so that it's not seen as the provider, not wanting to give, but there are cost implications. I would also say that we are in this time, kind of coming out of, or maybe we're still in, I don't know if we're coming out with the variants, where we're back to more people needing coverage in Medicaid, and what that really means in terms of the expansion of, some of the various elements of, durable products and those kinds of things. And I think we're really, states are going to become and are, becoming a little bit more strained again. Certainly these things kind of go through these cycles. And so, there's a time when, that is, we're in a time, I think that it's tough on state budgets. And I think coverage, kind of giving that baseline coverage to more people is in the short term really important, and perhaps a little bit more important than some of the individual pieces, unfortunately.
So we have 2 minutes left, and if any one of you has a 30-second action statement or closing statement you want to share, now's the time. You want to jump in? And I'm gonna signal. We're getting we could, while we're doing that, we could see our graphic illustration of what does Rio think we said.
I have just two things to say, okay? And it's really based on a conversation I had earlier in the week with a dear friend and colleague who reminded me that public health is what we as a society do collectively. And that I agree 100% with what you said, Christy. It's all of these things together that will make a difference. I just wanted to make sure that we lifted up the community contextual factors, but it is our collective action that's going to have the impact.
Thank you so much. Rio, go ahead and post.
Yep, and this is Anna, and I just wanted to piggyback on what Naomi just said and just really emphasize that, even if you do see a healthcare provider, sometimes we only have 20 minutes to cover everything. And so health is really outside of the provider's office. It's in the community, it's with our partners. And so we all have to play a role in promoting health and promoting good behaviors, especially with COVID. We realize that, a lot of the well women exams were put on hold, but we need to promote and reinforce what the healthy behaviors are and what visits should be kept if you have a chronic disease.
So Rio has been drawing in the background and giving us some graphics about this. And I just want to thank our panelists and say each of you is appreciated. Happy to learn. I learned more about your work. I'm sure others learned more about your work. That you've given this time to the meeting and to this panel is really very much appreciated. Rio, do you want to say anything about the graphic, or should I walk through it?
Please feel free to walk through it.
Okay, so thinking about, I love that, preconception reflecting, that evolution with the systems change and the equity and gender justice and more. And then about thinking, across the areas with the Women's Preventive Services Initiative and what Diana shared with us with AIM, and thinking about how we're integrating equity into those patient safety bundles and getting them out into the community, and about financing using our levers and having a new frontier on equity that we heard from Lakeisha, and then thinking about overall the role of consumer education and engagement in policy change. We need our consumers to be advocates. We need them to be self-advocates, as we heard on the last panel, but we also need them to be advocates for policy change. Many of you know, and you can't read this, but I have a sticky note I have been using the entire pandemic, which says advocacy may be as important as self-care. We've got to do both. And so our collective action is what's going to be making a difference. And we are, I'm sure that Rio's drawing will be shared again. Claudia is asking me a question. I will say it's a little blurry on our screens right now. So I turn it back to Eilish, to Sarah. Thank you for letting us go a minute over.
Hello, everyone. It's Shamika here, and I want to take this time to say thank you to all of today's speakers, and especially to Kay for hosting that wonderful panel. I don't even know if I'm supposed to do this, but I just want to say you all were amazing. Thank you, Diana, for introducing us to WPSI. Had never heard of it, but I definitely will be checking it out now. Kay, I love the quote on advocacy may be as important as self-care. I hope you don't mind. I got a sticky note now. I'm gonna have to add that to it. And Naomi, your quote around our collective action is what will make real impact. I need to get that somewhere and blow it up so it can like hang behind me. So anytime I'm in a meeting, anytime I'm talking to someone, like that is there. Like it's going to take collective action from all of us to create that real impact. So if you're like me and clearly really eager to talk about all the things that we have heard today, and just to share your ideas on how you want to move the vision forward and talk about the things that you've heard, please feel free to click on the link that should be in the chat that will take you to the Zoom room where we will talk about some of the awesome things that you guys have posted on the Jamboard, as well as things that maybe you haven't had time to post on the Jamboard. And this will be short, about 20 minutes. So you can feel free to pop in, say hello, stay the whole time if you like, or pop back out. Also, as a reminder, we have recorded today's session. That's right. You get to rehear all of these amazing conversations from these dynamic individuals at any time that you would like. So please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter so you know when this becomes available. And also, we will be making sure that you all have availability to the graphics that Rio has created. And thank you again, Rio. These have all been so amazing. And last but not least, definitely, I want to thank you all for showing up. I know some of you are in places where there are huge storms. Some of you are now dealing with the aftershock of some of those storms. Or it's a Wednesday, it's hump day. And we're almost a Friday Junior, but not quite there yet. So we appreciate you all for choosing to spend your Wednesday here with us. And please don't forget, there's another great day ahead tomorrow, full of some more dynamic speakers, more dynamic topics, all about how we're going to continue to move this work forward. And with that being said, I just want to turn it over to Alish.
Hey y'all. So I'm just like super souped up about tomorrow just because Shamika just played this violin for us and just like ushered us to our registration for tomorrow. Make sure you guys are signed up, please. We would like to see you. We would like to hear more of your thoughts and your ideas. Thank you for joining us today. And please do not forget to go back to the toolkit and access the evaluation form so we can know how we did. So you can just give us some feedback on the overall session, and we'll greatly appreciate it. Tomorrow's session begins tomorrow at noon Eastern. So thank you so much for joining us today. And also please be sure to check the chat box. You'll see the link to the breakout sessions where you can talk to us a little bit further and deeper and for a little while longer in case you just don't want to go yet. We're not pushing you out. You guys can come hang out with us for a little while longer. So thank you.
Hey, Alish, just want to let you know that I'm going to head on over to the breakout room.
No problem.
Alicia, I'll keep you company for a few minutes while I'm noticing the participants going to the room.
Okay, good. I wasn't sure if you were to click that link as well.
Figure we can give, we'll give people a few minutes to just kind of get up, just in case they are looking for the link, and then we'll go.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Great. That was so great.
All right, guess we could go over there too.
All right, see you in a minute.
All right.
Thanks, Thaddeus.